We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball!
To the end zone! Touchdown, Oregon! Mariota dives! Touchdown! They hand it off straight out! C.J. Burdell wins the game for Oregon!
Inside the 10! A Helfrich, a touchdown from Justin Herbert! Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it! Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon! They storm the field at Upton!
Welcome in, Duck fans, to another episode of the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner on the Ducks Rising Podcast Network. This podcast is sponsored by Backer, and we encourage all Duck fans to check out their amazing Oregon jackets, hoodies, hats, and more at Backer. That's BCKR.com. Use the code RISINGFREE for expedited free shipping, and 10% of all orders will go back to Ducks Rising as well. Super excited for today's podcast. Also joined by former Oregon defensive back and one of the best to ever do it at Oregon at that position, Ifo Ekpre-Olomu. Ifo, good to be with you today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course, man, you feeling the football excitement blood? First week coming up. Where are you at with things right now?
Yeah, I'm excited. I tell my buddies all the time, now that I don't play anymore, it's almost more stressful that you just watch the game and you're a big fan versus when you're actually playing, because you can't really change the outcome of the game. So now I'm a huge Duck fan. Till today, I watch every game if I can, and obviously we're rooting for them to have the most success as possible.
I love it. Well, we'll get into the season a little bit later on, but just grateful to have you on. I know for me that the 2014 interception against Michigan State still stands out in my head like it was yesterday. So just honored to have you on. I think Duck fans will be really excited to hear from you today.
Thanks.
Yeah. So talk to us start. I think it makes sense to just kind of go chronological. What was your recruitment like? How'd you end up at Oregon? What was that decision-making process like getting you up to Eugene?
Yeah, in high school, I came from Southern California, so grew up a USC fan because my brother played football ahead of me, so that kind of brought me into football. And at the time, I remember USC was under sanction, so I was getting recruited by most of the schools on the West Coast, and Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, schools like that. And I really had my mind set on, I wanted to go to Oregon or USC. At the time, Oregon was really becoming what they were the rest of the 2010s. But, yeah, it was just really cool to watch. I wasn't really huge on the jerseys. I care about looking good, but it was more about just the style of play and how fast the guys play. And I remember at the time they had Cliff Harris, and he was a guy that I really looked up to as far as a guy that could make plays and be there for his team when he had to be there. So, Oregon just really stuck to me during the recruiting process. And then I set up an official visit to Oregon. That was my first visit, and it was a pouring, raining game. They played against Portland State, and one of my close buddies now, Jeff Mell, he had 3 or 4 touchdowns, and they were making a bunch of plays and celebrating after. And I just remember that really stuck with me, that the weather was bad, but the fans were still excited, and no one acted like it was raining. And coming from California, sprinkles, everyone has at least an umbrella. So I just felt like it was a spot I wanted to be at, and I knew kind of my whole mind shifted once I got there. And I think I waited a couple months, and then I committed right before the playoffs for, I think, my senior year, or a little bit earlier in my senior year. So I knew I wanted to go there. I knew I wanted to be a Duck by that point. So, yeah, I was pretty sold. Coach John Neal was my defensive back coach at the time, and he was a guy that helped a lot of guys get to the NFL, helped change a lot of guys' lives. And he was somebody that he always told me he never really looked for the best player, but he looked for guys on film that could show that toughness, intelligence, and character. And that's something that really stuck with me now that I coach other athletes. The talent only takes you so far. So that was something at Oregon that they really emphasized. And, yeah, that was why I knew I wanted to be a Duck.
I love it. What were those earliest, coming in obviously as a freshman and experiencing Autzen for the first time, obviously being in Eugene, obviously a lot different. I went to school down in Southern California. Talk about 2 different, types of places and different environments. What were those? Was that transition tough for you? What were those earliest days as a freshman like in Eugene?
Yeah, I think in high school, as far as football wise, I think I over prepared. So I wasn't too shocked with how much we were doing, because I felt like I was already getting ready for that. Speed was definitely a little bit different. Obviously, the players are bigger, but that was something I always wanted to do. I wanted to play on the biggest stage in front of the most people possible. I know in high school, I always felt like I was under recruited. Like I would make all these plays and go against guys that are ranked ahead of me and make plays against them. And I felt like once I got to college, I could really showcase like there's no more who's favorites. Now you got to play the football and you got to make plays in front of everyone on TV that can watch. And that's something that that's what I was shooting for in high school. It's pretty crazy because like at that time, there wasn't really the early signing period. You didn't graduate early and get there in the spring. So I got there right before summer ball. You have a couple, maybe a month or two to really get acclimated, and then you start fall camp. And one thing that was good for me, they put you in like it wasn't a dorm, we had an apartment, but there was 4 guys, and one of my roommates was D'Anthony Thomas. So he had the world on his shoulders already when he got there, and he wasn't the biggest. He wasn't somebody that you just see and you're like, oh, you're expecting him to be amazing, but he was somebody that you could tell the way that he just carried himself and how confident he was. That was something that really rubbed off on me because I was going to Oregon expecting to play, but I didn't know I didn't know if I was going to redshirt. I didn't know if I was going to play safety. I didn't know if I was going to play corner because in high school I didn't really get a chance to play corner. Really, they just put you back there at safety as the best athlete and make sure no one scores. So that was kind of my role in high school. And I got to Oregon, and I remember my coach said, you could do whatever you want. So I said, I want to play corner. I want to be a corner. And my very first game, we played against LSU at Cowboy Stadium. So my high school, we made it to the semifinals my senior year. There was about 4,000 fans there. A couple months later, we're playing at AT&T Stadium with 120,000 fans. So I remember the first game that I ever had. I haven't even got to Autzen, but I was just looking up at the Jumbotron the whole game. Like it was just something that really shocked me. Like, this is how big a stadium actually is, because I wasn't a kid that like grew up going to college football games or going to NFL games. So my first NFL game was when I got to the NFL, and it shocked me with how big the stadium was. But it wasn't really something that was overwhelming. I remember I ran down on the first. I was on special teams at the time, so I ran down the first kickoff, and guys were 240 pounds and used to them being 170 pounds, and I'm running around guys not trying to get touched. And after a couple games, you start getting the hang of it. In my first game at Autzen, believe was against, I think it was Missouri State. I might be wrong, but it was a game that like, I think it was faster than what I thought because you're playing at home. And I always felt like at home there's a little bit more jitters. You want to make sure the fans feel good about how you perform, and you want to make sure you're at your best because you probably have people there watching. So I remember I had some jitters, and I was like, dang, Missouri State, they're pretty good, coach. Does it get better than this? And he's like, yeah, we're just getting started, man. So that was my first action on defense. I just remember, like, yeah, I was a little overwhelmed as far as just not taking the moment. I'm thinking multiple plays ahead and stuff like that. And then by the end of the year, my freshman year, I got a bunch of playing time. We had some injuries. I ended up getting the opportunity to start in the Rose Bowl against Russell Wilson. So that was my first start. We played in the Rose Bowl back at my hometown. So I didn't have a great game. That was something where I always felt like after that game, that's what made me the player I became, because I was one of those guys. I'm just not satisfied with being okay and not being okay, letting my teammates down. So I just like vowed to myself that this next summer I'm going to do all these things that are going to make sure that these aren't random opportunities. I'm going to make sure that I can make this play 10 out of 10 times, and kind of change the way I trained and change the way that I approach practice, and started becoming a leader after that point. And then next year, I felt personally, our sophomore year, we had the best team, my opinion, the best team that we had when I was at Oregon. That was 2012, and we ended up going 11-1, and we beat Kansas State in the Fiesta Bowl. And yeah, we had a bunch of guys like Michael Clay and Kiko Alonso and Deion Jordan and Marcus. That was his first year starting. So yeah, I thought that team was a team that we ended up falling short to Stanford. They scored on that controversial play that was on me, where the guy's in the back, Zach Ertz in the back of the end zone, and half of his body's in, half of it's out. Guess his shoulder fell in first, so they got the touchdown and went to overtime. And I thought that year we could have easily got to the finish line and finished, but we just had to learn a couple things. And by the time I became a senior, we got our chance to play in the national championship. Unfortunately, I dislocated my knee I think it was about a week and a half before the Rose Bowl against Florida State. And that was really the last time I ever got to play in a game again. So I was able to practice, do a lot of things in the pros, but last time I ever played a game was the Pac-12 championship against Arizona. So one thing I always remember, I never really thought of it bigger than the moment. I always cherished the time that I was there, and I always gave everything I had. So it's like there's never been any regrets about playing ball. It's just I always love Oregon because of what they did for me and how playing a game and catching a ball a few times and knocking down a ball can change your life. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that. I will argue to anyone that 2012 team is, probably one of the greatest teams Oregon ever had, if not the best. I feel like that. I mean, that Ertz catch still plays in my mind. I know early in the game, there's a couple opportunities.
Yeah, I dropped the interception, the play before the Ertz catch, which could have ended the game. So we always think it's pretty crazy. Like I coach so much football now and around a lot of football, you still remember the plays and the moments. You don't really you kind of it's all blurred, but once you start thinking about the game, you remember the game play by play almost. So yeah.
I gotta ask you a couple stories within that. So I know obviously coming off the 2011 year, I think that Darren Thomas goes underrated in a lot of Oregon circles right now for just like how good of a quarterback, leader, everything he was, and obviously leads you guys to a Rose Bowl. And then I think a lot of fans who maybe didn't follow the program closely were like caught off guard when he left, and you start hearing these rumors about a guy named Mariota and what that guy's going to be. Those of you who were at practice every day, like, did you guys know he was going to be that dude? Like, what was the vibe in 2011 with him on the scout team of like, oh dang, this guy, might be a dude come and take over?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't really remember Mark as much on the scout team. I know he was on the scout team, but me and him came in the same year. He already was showcasing what he could do as a freshman. The Darren Thomas thing, I wasn't on offense, so I wasn't really sure like the inner circle talking, but it was a little shocking. Like no one expected him to just leave, but he left, and I think at that point everyone kind of knew that Marcus was ready to play. He's one of those guys that practice like it's just his biggest thing as a defensive back. You're just always pissed at him because he doesn't make bad throws. He will not throw it if the guy's not open. So just playing that methodical game, we were able to get a quarterback with that much athletic ability, but also as smart as he is, and that's what makes you great. Like he's a guy that was able to take risks, but also he didn't turn the ball over much, whether he's running or passing, and that's really what made him great to me. Like whether it was practice, you had to earn every time you touched the ball against him, you had to earn it because it wasn't something that he was throwing it late. He was on time. He's getting it to the guys that he knows should get the ball. So that's what got him on the field early, and then he just became a more dynamic player every year. They started letting him run a little bit more. He started showcasing that he can do even more outside the pocket in the passing game. And that's what really opened up our offense once he started doing more than just facilitating the ball. He started carrying the team, and yeah, we were really special because of what Marcus could do. And yeah, having that dual threat is something that, Oregon, when they get something like that again, I think it's going to be really amazing to watch.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of went through it a second ago, but you had to be a part of a 4-year run that has never been had at Oregon before. You guys obviously, national title contention every year, in the national title game the year before you got there, and then led up to you guys playing in it again. How do you view those years? I think that a lot of Oregon fans think about it obviously in a totally positive light, but at the same time are like, man, I wish we had gotten one. Like we had so many opportunities there to, finally get that first one. How do you think through those years when it comes to the legacy of it nowadays with Oregon, probably as close as they've been to back to that spot today?
Yeah, I think it's different because it was a different time. You had to almost be perfect to get a chance to play in the championship. You could lose maybe once. Sometimes you couldn't even lose one game. So I think that whole like generation of Oregon football is maybe a little bit underrated just because we weren't in the championship game. But I think some of the teams that we beat and some of the games we played that during that time were, just the standard as far as offense and defense was pretty complimentary. And I think like that's something that we're going to keep shooting for because at that time I think we were almost close to the top 25 on defense and we were number one in offense almost I think 2 to 3 years. And yeah, I think the team all around was really well balanced. I know that at the time everyone thought it was all offensive scoring, but I remember we had a lot of really good defensive players that are still playing in the NFL right now, like Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner. They came in the year after me. Kiko Alonso. We had Troy Hill. Troy Hill was a backup at the time, and he played 11 years in the NFL. Terrence Mitchell, who was a stud. So a lot of NFL players there that are on the defense side of the ball, and we were also number one in the nation on offense. So, yeah, I think that team's going to, over time, when you see like the stats and the numbers that we accomplished, it'll definitely be something that's going to be remembered.
Did you guys, I was going to ask about that. You kind of led into it perfectly. I mean, I feel like Chip, the offense, the speed, everything. I mean, 99% of the Oregon discussion those days was just like offense, offense, offense. How were you guys fine with that as a defense? Were you like, hey, we understand? I feel like when thinking about it now, I mean, you mentioned some of the talent. I feel like Coach Aliotti, Neal, these other guys you mentioned, like never truly got probably the respect they deserve when it comes to the units you were putting out there. I mean, what was that? Was that something you guys noticed and talked about?
I mean, somewhat, but I mean, you know what it is. The game's all about scoring touchdowns. Like no one wants to watch 7. I mean, you watch the 7-3 game, but you're not going to remember, oh, that defensive player had 18 tackles. You can remember that touchdown that won the game. So it's what it ends up being about. And I understand that as a defensive back, like your job is to stop guys from catching it. You're not the quarterback that's throwing the ball or the guy that's scoring. So when it comes to that, you kind of understand. But Chip was one of those guys that it wasn't about offense. It was just about instilling confidence in the team. And like, remember he'd always say, pressure is what you feel when you don't know what you're doing. But I don't feel pressure because I know what I'm doing. And I just remember him being a coach, being able to talk to us like that on game day. Yeah, we're going to run the ball down the field. We're going to score touchdowns. We're going to take the ball away. Never was, this is a good team. It never was about what the other team was doing. It was always about how good we are and how if we play our game, you don't have to even worry about who you're playing with or playing against. And I love that about him. That's what I always remember about Chip, that he just, as far as confidence in the team, like he just believes in his guys so much. And, yeah, I forgot what your question was, but I kind of rambled on about Chip. But
No, that's awesome, and I want to hear a ton about Chip anyways. So, what was? I mean, I still remember it wasn't really Twitter days yet. I still remember the like Browns rumors about Chip, and then ultimately, 2013 heads to the Eagles. What do you like remember from that time as players? Like how looped in were you? Did you guys know it was coming? And then what was that transition like? With Helfrich taking over.
yeah, I know Chip was trying to keep it pretty quiet. So I think there was a situation where we thought he was leaving, then he said he wasn't, and then a couple weeks later he ended up leaving. As a player, like I don't know how everyone felt. For me as a player, I personally, and it's nothing against coaches, I never played football for the coaches. I always played for the players on my team. So like if the coach goes, I don't blame him for wanting to be better. I'm trying to leave too. And I always felt like eventually, like if you're doing that well, you're probably going to be asked to go somewhere else unless you feel like you want to be there forever. And I know Chip wanted to be an NFL coach and keep evolving offenses. So I had nothing against it. I knew we were going to hire within, so it wasn't anything at the time where you're thinking about leaving or anything like that. So I was just locked in on becoming the best player I could. And that year that we lost Chip, we lost a little bit of that confidence. We ended up losing 3 games that year. We beat Texas in the Alamo Bowl. Kind of tell a little bit that he was gone and some of that leadership in the front. And it was nothing against Coach Helfrich. He just was the first-time coach. And I don't feel like Chip, he had to work a couple of years to be able to be that guy. And then the next year we got to the championship. So Coach Helfrich figured it out really quick on some of the things that we just needed to fix and correct. And it was nothing like scheme-wise. It was just more us being connected on the same page, while everyone playing for the same reasons and those type of things. So, yeah, I enjoyed my time at Oregon. I thought I had the best opportunity I possibly could, made the correct choice because it was all about becoming a better player. It was never about anything given to you. It was never about your standing the year before. So I think that's why Oregon in general, even now with Coach Lanning, is having so much success because it's always been about being your best, and that's going to be the guys playing, and that's how we're going to win games.
How different, I know, moving a little bit to now, and I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about like your job now and working with high school kids and different things, but how different is it, watching these kids get recruited now and the things they're navigating versus your time?
Yeah, I work with a lot of kids now that they're playing college ball, they're seniors, they're trying to get recruited, younger players. So like, biggest thing I always tell them is that you got to run your own race because there's so much of seeing other people and trying to compare yourself to them. And at the end of the day, I always tell them, guys, everyone's time comes at a different time, but when your time is there, are you going to be ready? And most of the time that's Friday nights. Can you actually watch the film and showcase that you are the player that you say you are, or are we trying to just get recruited? And that's a big thing now. It's so much harder to get recruited because coaches have access to every kid's film. When I was playing, like, if every kid's not even making a highlight tape. So That's a big difference now. It's like they have access to it. They have a staff that can watch it. They're gonna see everything. They're gonna see, do you jog? Do you sprint to every play? Do you give half effort if the run's the other way? Things like that. So like tell guys now, it's like you have to be way more fine-tuned in high school than you ever had, just because once again they can see everything now. And the monitoring on social media, obviously kids know, like you wanna post what you want people to expect out of you and what you want people to think about you. And a lot of times I think kids, they get a little bit steered in the wrong direction when they post so much of their life, because it ends up being certain things that maybe don't tie in with the colleges they want to go to. And I always kind of tell them, keep it pretty vague and keep it about football and your family, and keep all the other stuff to yourself. Text your friends. And that's a big thing now. It's like one thing you post can change your whole perspective on if you can get recruited or not. So like, why not just don't post it? Just focus on things, like I said, football and family and your school. And if you post every day, that's what they think you are. You're a football, family, and school kid.
I love it. I have that conversation with my kids every day. Well, I know you got to run to practice soon, so I want to hit you with a few quick hitters, and then we'll get you out of here. I know these are our fan favorite questions usually. So first off, what was the favorite uniform you ever wore at Oregon?
I think my favorite uniform was the first ever. I got it hung up in my house. We played against LSU. It was like kind of charcoal black, and then we wore the lime green outline numbers and then black helmet. So yeah, that was my favorite.
Those are underrated. I feel like they were just one and dones. And
yeah, one and done. They haven't brought that. Well, they wore something like that in the Natty that year, but it was all white.
Right.
Yeah. We haven't had good luck with the neon, so maybe they just got rid of it.
I feel that. What was the most hyped locker room you ever remember post game?
Whew, that's a good one. I think Wisconsin definitely after the Rose Bowl was pretty hyped, because that was the first time we kind of been back there winning the Rose Bowl. Going to the national championship was really hyped after we beat Arizona, because we lost to them earlier in the year. And then Michigan State, definitely, that was something like, I wasn't a guy that went out much in college, but after that game, we all got together and celebrated, because it was something like, came back from being down, and the fans, I think that was one of the most attended games Autzen ever had. So, yeah.
We had Tyrell on a couple of weeks ago, and he told us about Coach Lubick taking a bite of some In and Out after the 2014 Rose Bowl in the locker room, and he said it was beyond hype.
Yeah, we all stopped there as a team. That was pretty cool.
Love it. What was the loudest stadium you ever played in beyond Autzen?
Some sleepers. I would say Washington State was pretty loud. That was a good one. Trying to think. I would say just being around Autzen, I'd never really considered anything else like crazy loud that we played at. And also at the time I was playing, we were winning most of the time during the games. But I know ASU is loud, Arizona's loud. I mean, I went to the Ohio State versus Oregon game last year, so I've never experienced anything like that in my life playing or watching. So I don't think anything's ever been like that.
You think that game was louder than the 2014 Michigan State game?
That was the loudest game I've ever been a part of. After the game, my head was bugging me for like 3 days.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah, it was definitely a once in a lifetime experience, I feel like.
I said after that game, that was the first time I can remember being it back to like 2014 level, and I compared it to that Michigan State game.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, 2 more really quick. Is there a coach or teammate who had a lasting impact on your life beyond football?
Yeah, I'll say John Neal. He's somebody I still talk to today. He was one of those guys. It never was about football. Football comes easy if you can do all these other things, and it's what a lot of the things I teach the kids now is because of the words that he gave me. And at the time, as a young kid, like you hear some of it, the other go out the ear. But now, as I'm getting older, all of it's coming back to me, and you remember the messages that he gave you to set up your life and prepare yourself to take care of your family and things like that.
Awesome. All right, last one. Which game or specific play still plays out in your head like it was yesterday?
For me, like obviously catching interceptions is great, but for me, like I'll never forget that Stanford game, even though we lost. because it was just so back and forth. I think I had like 2 forced fumbles and a couple knockdowns, but it was one of those games that was just like every time we're going to score is a turnover. Every time they're going to score, it's a turnover. And I'll never remember that just because it was double overtime and we got a chance to play in a game like that. I think other than that, I always remember LSU just because I remember walking out, watching Tyrann Mathieu and seeing who that guy was for the first time and seeing what I wanted to become eventually in college. I'll never forget that because that was some big time football. That I think that game, some of the best players I've ever got to watch on the field and play against were playing against us. So that game too.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I know you got to get out of here. We're super grateful to have you on today and hear from you. Let fans know what you're up to these days, and then we'll sign off for next week and hope to have a great season.
Definitely go Ducks. Appreciate
awesome.
you having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for hearing from you. Fans, thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner, and we'll see you next week.